Good evening, everybody. I'm Pete Meyer, and this is Shop Talk, a presentation of the Endeavor Business Media's Vehicle Repair Group that's home to Motor Age, PTEN, ABRN, Aftermarket, Business World, and Professional Distributor magazines. If you work in the automotive aftermarket, we've got you covered. Today, we're going to continue our coverage of the Equipment and Tool Institute event ToolTech 2022. Being held in San Diego, California at the Marriott Coronado Island Resort. The first day of the event was very eventful. There were several interesting presentations and observations made that are certainly worthy of note, and I want to share them here. But before we get to that, let me share a few words about ETI. The event here today marks ETI's 75th anniversary. That's a road mark that many other organizations in our industry can't claim. And like the automotive aftermarket, ETI grew out of the American experiences in World War II, which developed the need for the use of automotive equipment to rapidly and efficiently move supplies, troops, and weapons. During the second year of the War Production Board created an advisory council consisting of approximately 20 equipment and tool manufacturers to seek their advice. And these 20 manufacturers soon became aware that there was a great deal that could be gained by working cooperatively on problems they shared as an industry. Now, after the war, 62 industries, manufacturers got together and they put together their catalogs and put them in a central location. These catalogs were compiled into a publication, known as the Automotive, Aviation, Agriculture, and Marine Manual. The acceptance of this document was so gratifying that a second edition was prepared and distributed the following year. In the spring of 1947, a meeting was called in Atlantic City by a group of about 50 equipment and tool manufacturers to discuss ways and means to form a group that would continually promote the interests of those manufacturers. And this meeting laid the groundwork for the organization, which ultimately became the Equipment and Tool Institute. Today, the Institute is an association of automotive and tool and equipment manufacturers and technical information providers that work together closely, sharing information, committed to 5 key goals. Number 1 is to advance the productivity and profitability and growth of the automotive service industry by ensuring that United States service bays are the best equipped and its technicians are the most highly trained and thoroughly informed in the world. Number 2, to provide technical training information as well as marketing guidance to the end user, thus providing strength and guidance to the customer base. Number 3, to stimulate feedback from the users to the manufacturers to improve product quality. Number 4, to provide members an ongoing stream of current information and advanced and specialized technological information through planned cooperative dialogue with the vehicle manufacturers. Number 5, to provide industry leadership by cooperating with legislators and regulatory agencies, all in pursuit of a variable environment of environmental safety and efficiency programs. And now ETI has made it available for shop owners and technicians and any other individual that's interested in accessing the benefits of the resources that ETI has to offer by creating a third tier of membership called the affiliate membership. So I encourage you to learn more by contacting ETI directly. Their website is www.etools.org. Now, the next item on the agenda for presentations began with Jim Fish and Brian Daugherty, and it was centered on a topic that we've reported on quite a bit, and that is needs and service related to advanced driver assist systems, or ADAS. And it was kind of interesting to note that ADAS is a term that was actually coined in the aftermarket. The OEMs don't use that term. They refer to these systems as collision avoidance systems. So ADAS is a unique acronym that was created by the independents. Now, the primary focus of the conversation that these two gentlemen offered was the huge revenue opportunity ADAS presents to the aftermarket. That is, you, the shop owners, both in the collision and mechanical repair sectors. And I want you to consider a few facts that they presented. In 2021, over 1 million vehicles required ADAS service. 750,000 of that were calibrations. 90% of that work was outsourced by the shop, both collision and mechanical repair, and it was outsourced 75% of the time to an OE dealer. So we took that money that was laying on the table for us and we gave it to the dealerships in our markets. And the growth of this market is estimated to grow substantially. In fact, let me just pull up the stats on that so I make sure I get it right. Yes, the numbers quoted were a compounded average rate of more than 17% through model year 2030, reaching a potential revenue level of $752 million just in ADAS service and calibrations. And they stressed it's only going to increase exponentially because the facts have proven that ADAS, these collision avoidance systems, do indeed work in reducing accidents. In fact, they expect over the next 10 years for accidents to be reduced 20%. And they may not sound like a huge number, but you consider the number of accidents that are caused, and half of those are rear end collisions, which automatic emergency braking systems are designed to prevent. It's a huge drop. We're talking millions of accidents a year that can be eliminated just from this technology. And because of that, you can fully expect to see that these systems will become mandated on vehicles in the very near future. Right now, there is a memorandum of understanding that covers about 99% of the manufacturers who have agreed to have certain features, certain collision avoidance systems installed in all of their vehicles by a certain model year. The number escapes me, but it's very, very soon. And as long as that's on track, it's going to become very, very common. Now, here's my question to you as shop owners. Again, collision, mechanical repair side, it works for either side. Are you one of those shops that is performing ADAS calibrations in your shop or servicing ADAS components? Are you replacing cameras and radar assemblies that would then require calibration? And if you're like most that I've met personally and talked to, the answer is a resounding no. And there's several reasons that have been given for that. Either I don't have the space because some ADAS calibrations do take a lot of room. I don't have the money to invest in the equipment. Yes, it can be rather costly to get started in the ADAS calibration business. Or I don't have time. It's not part of my market. My market doesn't require it. A lot of different reasons for not doing it. But I'm going to ask you this next. Does your shop or shops perform wheel alignments? Do you perform tire service? Are you doing steering and suspension service? Are you doing anything that would require you to remove and reinstall a camera or radar assembly? Because if you're doing any of these things, you're in the ADAS business and just don't realize it. And I want to stress, just as the presenter stressed, there's a certain measure of liability that comes when you're affecting how these systems operate. You can't ignore it. There's not going to be a light on the dash saying that it's not calibrated, not yet anyway. And maybe the customer will never know that it's been adjusted, but you can't ignore that and for a couple of reasons. Number one, in many areas, maybe federally, I'm not sure, but I know in many states it's illegal for you to return a system to your customer, a safety system that has been compromised because of the service or work that you performed. And in any of these cases we just talked about, that's exactly what you did. And even if you are doing calibrations, we're seeing many shops or technicians who are doing calibrations, but they're doing them wrong. Yes, you can get it to say calibrated on your scan tool, but it is not calibrated properly. And that means that sensor, that radar assembly, that camera assembly is not looking exactly where it's supposed to. And this is one of those repairs, ladies and gentlemen, that you can't do halfway. You either did it right or you did it wrong. And I want you to consider the liability that comes with doing it wrong. If you have a vehicle that has automatic emergency braking, for example, and your forward-facing radar, you unbolted it and you bolted back on. Hey, now it's not looking in the same place it was when it left the factory. If it's just off by 1 degree, that can either cause that automatic emergency braking to react too late and not avoid the collision, or react too early and have the vehicle apply the brakes way before it's even close to impacting with another car. Either one is going to shock your customer. And I'm going to lay this out here for you guys and gals. It's not going to be too much longer before some law firms figure this out and start digging deeper into the service records of the vehicles that they're involved with in terms of motor vehicle accidents and the lawsuits they're pursuing. And if they see that a windshield's been replaced, tire work's been done, anything at all that may have impacted their ADAS systems, they're going to come looking at your records for proof that you did it and you did it right. And if you can't prove that, or if it turns out that your service performed improperly, well, somebody's going to get hit with a multi-million-dollar lawsuit eventually. I don't know when, but mark my words, that's going to happen. So get ahead of the game and take the consideration to invest in the equipment that you need, the training that you need, and be that leader in your market. Now, to the good part of it, this is kind of like the Wild West days of OBD1. And if you were around back then, you knew that there were every manufacturer had a different way of doing things. The diagnostic connectors were different. You had a drawer full of different connectors you had to use. The code definitions were all different. There was nothing standardized at all about the system. But then came along OBD2, and now we have standard connectors, right? We have standardized codes. That's global OBD2. We have 10 different modes that are standardized, and it's across the board. If it's sold in the United States for sale, then it has to meet these standards and has to provide these standardized access points and data points. Expect to see the same thing develop in ADAS. And the SA, there's several committees associated with the Society of Automotive Engineers that are working to do just that, to standardize, first of all, just to standardize the names of the various systems to make that uniform, to standardize calibration processes, to standardize service processes. It's all in the works. So it is coming. But in terms of not becoming self-calibrating, the presenters made a point of saying that there are some systems that can calibrate for like wear and tear, small adjustments. But if a component's been replaced or removed and replaced, then that's going to require some type of manual calibration by the technician. So that's not going away anytime soon. All right. So again, consider it. If you're not involved with that, take a hard look at it. Take another look at it. It's only going to get better. It's only going to grow in terms of service opportunity. And if you're out in the forefront now, if you're the go-to shop now, then you'll be in a good position to take advantage of that in the future. Okay, good. All right. Next up at the presentation here at ToolTech 2022 was a very informative and rather entertaining presentation by two of iCar's lead personnel, the trainers, Dirk Fuchs and Neil Spetjens. And Neil, if I got your name wrong, I apologize. Did the best I could with it, so forgive me. The topic they had was high voltage safety, and the focus was on the impact, especially on collision repair techs. Consider, for example, even first responders, tow operators, people who respond to these scenes where an EV or hybrid vehicle has been hit, and it's been questionable whether the battery's been compromised or not. And they equated that to the same as having, say, a car come in with a fuel leak. You know, you're going to address the fuel leak, make the vehicle safe to work on. Excuse me. And the same thing is going to apply to high voltage battery vehicles, HV or EV vehicles. When the battery condition is questionable, before you even touch the car, you want to make sure that there's no insulation fault and there's no high voltage grounding to the body of the vehicle itself that could cause a safety condition for you. So that's just one thing. And he kicked it off with an interesting comparison and discussion about the electrical resistance of the human body. According to Neil, the human body has roughly a resistance of 1,000 ohms. And then he suggested considering a modern high voltage battery, say, of roughly 400 volts. And then, of course, if you are familiar with Ohm's law, you can do a little math and you figure it out pretty quickly that means that under those conditions, there's going to be a current flow through your body of approximately 500 milliamps or half an amp. Doesn't sound like a whole lot, does it? But if you look at the statistics, a half an amp is enough to, at the first part, trigger what's called the let go response, or more precisely, the inability for you to let go of whatever it is you're holding that's providing that electrical shock. The current is enough to cause your muscles to contract so hard that you physically are not able to let go of that object. And that's one of the reasons that if you're working on HV or you've gone through HV training, one of the things you want in the shop is a safety hook. So if that happens to someone, you can another person can use that hook to break them loose of that object, because you've only got about half a second. Once you have been connected to that kind of current for more than half a second, well, now you've passed from the let go phase to the fibrillation phase, where your heart rhythm is going to be directly impacted. And of course, that could very quickly lead to your imminent demise. So really want to stress the importance of being safe around these electrical systems, it's high voltage systems. And again, because the focus was on the collision repair guys, some other factors that come into play that's kind of unique to the collision market. So if you're a collision repair guy, I want you to pay attention to this. One of those things was the phenomenon that they described as battery concussion. And this happens to the high voltage battery when it's exposed to the same kind of G forces that causes concussion in a human being. But in the case of the battery, the battery cells can swell, and that leads to an increase in internal resistance in the battery cells, and that leads to higher cell temperatures, all of which you can look at on a scan tool to see where they're going and to give you some pointers on maybe you've got a problem. If you see a big variation in cell balance, minimum, maximum voltage levels are way apart, or you see excessive high temperatures in some of the cells. In fact, another great idea that they offered was, take an IR gun, infrared temperature gun, or even a thermal imager, and scan the battery. Look to see if you see obvious hot spots in the batteries. These are all precursors to what could eventually become a fire risk in the battery itself. And if that happens, if you see smoke starting to roll off that battery case, according to the presenters, you need to beat feet. You need to get out of the area as quickly as you can. Don't try to put water on it. Don't try to use a fire extinguisher on it. If that high voltage battery pack catches fire, there's absolutely nothing you can do but let it burn. And there's nothing you can do to stop it. And you don't want to be around it when it's burning. You don't want to be around the fumes. Those can also be very hazardous to your health. In fact, that's why some OEMs recommend a safe, clean zone around any hybrid EV vehicle that's under repair, again, especially in a collision repair environment. For example, Audi specifies 16 feet of clearance in every direction around the vehicle while it's under repair, and it should be even marked off with a safety zone so that other technicians in the shop know not to go anywhere near it. In addition to being in that safe zone, it also needs to be a clean zone. In fact, Dirk commented that it should be laboratory clean zone, because we don't want any dust, debris, paint overspray, sanding dust, whatever, getting into the connector, the open connector, when that safety disconnect switch has been removed, because that's going to increase resistance, that's going to increase heat, that's going to increase the fire risk on the battery. Now, the two had quite a bit more to share, but what I really want you to take away from this, the presentation that they did make, was that it takes training to be safe and effective in working any of the new technologies that we have. EV cars are not going away. Right now, they only make up about 1% of the fleet, but within the next 10 years, the OEMs hope that's going to be closer to 30% of the fleet. So think about that a minute. That's 1 in 3 cars on the road will be an electric powered vehicle, either hybrid or pure EV. So that future is coming. Nothing you're going to say or do is going to change that. So embrace it, be ready for it, get the training you need, get the tooling you need. And if you're in the collision repair market, I'm very proud to say that they also shared that they're close to opening a second state-of-the-art training facility in Vernon Hills, Illinois. I think it's just outside of Chicago. And I encourage you to go to iCar, the website, to not only check on their training opportunities for your staff, but collision and mechanical side, take a look at the resources that they have available. There's some great resources on their website, informational and otherwise. And you can find it all at www.i-car-com. One too far. There we go. All right, so I don't want to pass that by. I just want to make sure I got back to that next slide you see. And there was a short period of time where they had some OEM representatives and a panel discussion. And the representatives were from Toyota, Honda, and General Motors. And there was a few good points made, but the two that really stood out for me was first on addressing the increasing prevalence of over-the-air updates. And if you're not familiar with that, this is where the OE's vehicles can be reprogrammed, reflashed from the cloud rather than having to connect physically to the DLC and uploading the software. Tesla's been doing it for quite some time. A lot of the manufacturers have adopted it. I think GM and Honda both said at the presentation that they've been doing this since 2018, but they've been limiting it to the infotainment systems. In other words, they're not doing powertrain-related updates, primarily because they have to make sure first how they can ensure that the vehicle is not being operated at the time that the update's being downloaded. They don't want any conflict there in how these powertrain systems operate, of course. Now, in either case, the consumer gets a notice, has the ability to either accept or deny the update. If they're not comfortable with it coming from the cloud, then they can take it to the dealer or their aftermarket shop, and have it done the old-fashioned way through the DLC. And you're probably going to see an increase in these over-the-air updates, and for a couple of reasons. First was an increase in customer satisfaction cited by the reps that were on the panel. And when you think about it, it makes sense. If you've got, say, a build series of 20, 30,000 vehicles that had some kind of an issue that you're going to apply a flash to correct, by doing it over the cloud, over the air, you're going to be able to get a very quick completion of that service campaign and darn near 100% coverage in a very short period of time, maybe a few days, a week tops, as opposed to having the consumer react to a letter or notification and then waiting for them to find the time to take it to the dealer or another shop to have that done. All right. Now, even if they get to the point where over-the-air updates are being applied to other systems on the vehicle, they still assure us that it's also still going to be able to be done through the DLC. So they're trying to assure us that there really is going to be an impact in our revenue opportunities when it comes to performing these reprogramming. So that's always nice to know that they got us looking out for, which is actually the second part of what that really caught my eye in the presentation. As I reported last time, NASA released a position statement, if you want to call it that, on something that's going on with Mercedes-Benz and their lack of compliance with the ASIS service agreements that were in place. And some of us in the audience were raising concerns that these representatives, these OEMs, may also be looking to limit access to their repair data and resources that we need to fix their car. And I'm glad to say that at least these representatives, General Motors, Toyota, Honda, all very strongly stated in no uncertain terms that there are no plans by their manufacturers to limit what we have available to us in the aftermarket, which is a good thing. And I think the Toyota rep put it best, and I'm paraphrasing here, when he said that if a dealer needs it to fix our cars, then the aftermarket needs it to fix our cars. And I hope that stays that way. And I hope that's the majority opinion when it comes to the other OEs that were not represented at this year's event. All right, the next item on the list and the final presentation of the day I keep going one too far on the slides. There we go. Was made by a young lady named Kristen Thompson of Goodyear, and she shared very exciting information on a technology that Goodyear is still polishing up before releasing to the market. And it's called Goodyear Sightline. It's pretty cool. It's a telematic solution to tire management that uses a sensor in the tire that's attached to the inner liner of the tire. And this sensor is a lot more than just a TPMS sensor. Of course, it can monitor and report leakage, how fast, how slow, and make notification to the driver. But it also can do a lot more. It can assess the load being placed on the tire, can assess the heat of the tire. It can assess the wear rates of the tire, and a lot more. And whether it's going to be ready for release, That's the thing. Got a little sneak peek at there. It can be something that is might be available as an option for the independent shop to offer to their consumers, and could be installed in any vehicle. It's simply a matter of installing the sensors, the telematics unit, and then hooking it up for your customer. And all of this information was done before lunch on day one at ToolTech 2022. The second half of the day was reserved for one-on-one meetings between OEMs and aftermarket companies and information companies and media representatives for the rest of the afternoon. So that was a lot in one half and one day. We still got one day left to go. I hope that you will follow us on the social media of your choice to make sure that you will be able to catch our updates on the last and final day of ToolTech 2022. We'll bring that to you and hopefully have it up and running for you as soon as that day is completed. And until then, I am Pete Meyer, and you've been watching Shop Talk.